founders of our Constitution were influenced by two primary schools of thought, classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy. Classical republicanism's ideals of the common good the ancient Romans lived by. Philosophers like Aristotle and Cicero noted that government works best in small, homogeneous communities.
Aristotle believed that humans are political animals and that government is necessary and inevitable for them. Within the society, Aristotle believed that it was the citizen's duty to learn what was best for society, not just for himself through moral education. Their duties lies in giving up on selfish thoughts and sacrificing in order to do what is best for the republic.
On the other hand, philosophers like Locke and Hobbes believed that all people were born with God-given rights, but that those rights were very insecure without a government for protection.
Therefore, governments were formed when people willingly enter a social contract with one another in order to have their rights protected. To natural rights philosophers, the ultimate purpose of governments was to protect the life, liberty, and property of individuals.
The major difference between classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy is that classical republicanism asserts that government should strive to achieve the common good, while natural rights philosophy emphasizes the protection of individual rights.
These two different purposes of government can sometimes be used at odds with one another. For example, a government trying to promote the common good might ban smoking in restaurants to protect public health, while a government trying to promote individual rights will protect smokers and restaurant owners' rights to make their own health-related choices.
However, our Constitution is founded on both philosophies, and our government is meant to both promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty.
The United States Constitution is an example of how classical republicanism and natural rights can work together. For instance, we create a social contract that we the people ordain in order to secure the blessings of liberty. This sentiment expresses the core theories of natural rights.
On the other hand, we promote classical republicanism by providing for the common defense and promote the general welfare. In certain cases, we must sacrifice our individual rights in order to achieve goals of common good.
For instance, our founders included the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment in order to allow governments to forcibly purchase the property of private citizens if it was needed for public use. Individuals throughout time have sacrificed their property rights in order to allow communities to build schools, roads, and parks.
However, in many cases, the preservation of our individual rights does not conflict with the common good, but rather make it possible. The protection of our individual rights to freedom of speech, even the ability to express unpopular and controversial ideas, has pushed society to become more tolerant, inclusive, and connected.
There are three central purposes of government. 1, provide safety and security for citizens. 2, protecting individual rights. And 3, promoting a good life for all people.
These should be obtained through a social contract in the form of a constitution that both empowers and restrains government.
James Madison in Federalist 51 states that in framing the government which is to be administered by man over man, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself.
Thank you so much. I'd like to just spend a few minutes for follow-up questions, get a chance just a discussion, essentially. So my first one is, you described regarding your essential purpose of government to provide safety, individual rights, and promote good life. Do you see something that could be, how you would implement that? Something you could put in D.C., is that possible? If so, how?
Can you rephrase the question, please?
No problem, no problem. What I'm just saying is that one of the questions is how should that be obtained? Your purpose of government. Is it something that is it something feasible in D.C. or is it or not?
Well, as we said in our statement, how we would implement that, I guess, would be through creating a constitution like our founders did. They wanted to promote, like we said, the general welfare. They wanted to protect citizens, and they wanted us to have basic rights, and we had those rights through a constitution.
But the thing is, like, since D.C. is like a federal district, as far as the most obliged to what the federal government says, and for D.C. to follow like our standard of what a government should be, it needs to take a different approach, not necessarily a constitution, but sort of like sort of like referendums or some sort of initiative, like a petition, basically, to the government to change the way that DC is treated. And in place for that, we would place like promote like the good life for people and stuff that we mentioned in the what a good government should be.
Excellent.
John Adams' Massachusetts Constitution and Thomas Jefferson's Virginia Constitution both made provisions that discuss state-driven public education as a way to perpetuate our republic. Is this an example of classical republicanism or natural rights?
I feel as though that promoting education within states would be considered classical republicanism because it ties along with civic virtue and how citizens should be informed about policies and take part in their state or their city through things like voting and different methods like that.
It can also be said that it could be natural rights because each state is its own. And with that, like individual rights, right? It's up to each state to decide how they go about like the education system and how they teach the students about the education, how they can vote in Congress, how they can go through all the process. So you could say it is the common good, but it could also be that it's individual rights at work too.
Enlisting your three purposes of government, safety, protection of rights, and promoting the good life, you lead me to ask you, how do I know when I'm leading the good life?
Funny.
What does it look like?
Well, when you know you're living the good life, is basically when the government is not becoming abusive of its means, and the people and the government are at a social contract and have a check and balance.
I think, I guess leading the good life would kind of tie with what we said about James Madison quote in Federalist 51. It's a government that is protecting us, but a government that knows its power so that it will not protect us so much that it's infringing upon our rights.
Does it have duties to help me live the good life? For example, if I am born into abject poverty, does your view of the government advancing the good life involve that duty to help me out of that circumstance?
I would say yes to that question. For like the ideal type of government, they should, and the one that we mentioned, they should be able to sort of help everyone. When you live in the good life, that doesn't mean you're suffering all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It means you're constantly sort of feeling good about yourself, and you're not like very low, very at the bottom of society. It means you're with other people, and you're with other people who can relate to you, and not necessarily like at the very bottom.
To add on what my colleague Hector said, if you're living with a government that's that's helping you promote the good life, then you would want to be with a government that, as you said, is helping to, I guess, get you to the next plateau in life. And if you are in poverty, there are assistance and there are services to help you advance your life, because in our society today, everyone is not on a level playing field, but there are services that the government has to get you, I guess, to help you achieve the ability to get on another plateau in life.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Usually, between classical republicanism and national rights philosophy, they conflict with each other. Even you said so earlier as well. One thing, can you give an example of a current event regarding that conflict?
And current event would be marriage equality. Of course, that's a hot topic in government. And the classical republicanism views, I would say, is how people are basically I feel as though the government is saying, like, it shouldn't be equal on a federal level because of religious views, but then I feel like the individual rights portion would be, or the natural rights philosophy portion would be the focus on the rights of gay couples trying to achieve equal rights.
And of course, on the other hand, you have gun control, like we see in the Sandy Hook accident where the man slaughtered some kids in elementary school, but the individual right should be for their own personal handguns or the common good to be protected by having bans on the guns.
Time.
Excellent. Let's give them a round of applause. I just want to say thank you very much for an excellent presentation. It's not easy. It's not an easy topic. It's like, philosophy and then trying to put it together. But you guys handled it yourselves real well. And you guys were just really straightforward in what you had in giving your definitions of natural rights and classical republicanism. Thank you so much for the clarity on that, and as well as putting it clear on the answer of what's the essential purpose of the government. You laid it out. 3. Here they are. Boom, boom, boom. And so that was real well. It answers that question, and I thought it was well done. And it's also in my question. I understand that DC stands, but you handled it well, and also in your descriptions of the different issues in my second question as well. But overall, a good presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I first want to thank you and your teacher and your parents for all your hard work. This is difficult material. It's a material that in many instances you won't get until you're in college. You're probably that much more of a leg up over the other students that that are either in your school or in other schools. I think you did a good job of walking through the John Locke and Thomas Hobbes, Aristotle, the kind of the touchstones of both classical republicanism and natural right theory. I like the ways in which you toward the end, you referenced Federalist 51. I thought you did a good job of bringing in your current events and the status of D.C. as a federal district to help kind of highlight some of your points. And my question about the public education is kind of a complicated one. It's really in some ways both. And I think that your different points of view and disagreement in a way on that was, I think, good and healthy. So I want to thank you again. You did a good job.
And I just want to know what's happening in the district. The last time I met a district team, their sign said, "No taxation without representation." Are you guys just giving up on me here? You did a really nice job of laying out the differences between the two philosophies. I might pick a bone with you about Aristotle and Cicero about the necessity of government as opposed to its naturalness. It's unimaginable that human beings would live together without government. Hobbes sees its necessity, as does Locke, but that's trivial in a lot of ways because you really clarified those differences very, very nicely. I really loved your reference to the takings clause. That's the first time somebody has picked up on the significance of that. Of course, it's no taking without just compensation. So it's introducing, again, that classical word. We don't find the word justice in any natural rights thinking. It's not there in Hobbes or Locke. It's there in classical thought. And so this notion that, yes, we will protect property, but it can be taken for the public good with just compensation really is a great example of how those two concepts blend. And you could work on that, just hammer the really good example and make it even better. I just thought you did a terrific job with a remarkably difficult topic. You're natural philosophers, and I just hope you will continue to be so. Thank you very much. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
It's the short straw. You really did well.
Thank you.
Oh, look at the happy scholars.
You know you're supposed to start recording.